guest interview with our operations manager, Michelle Green. Hi Michelle, thank you for joining me.
Hi.
Congratulations for your recent shortlisted nomination as Engineer of the Year 2022 at the Engineering Talent Awards. This is a massive achievement. Well done.
Thank you.
Today we will discuss Michelle's career path and the amazing initiatives she's been a part of and how we can encourage more women to join our industry. So Michelle, tell me a bit more about your background. How did you find your passion for engineering?
Well, I remember being at school and they were doing a careers fair and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I remember discussing it with my dad. And my dad said, "But you're an engineer." And to him it was the most obvious thing. And yet to me, I didn't even know what an engineer was. I didn't know what they did, I didn't know anything about it. So my dad clearly could see I had an engineering brain, very good at logic puzzles and figuring things out and seeing how things work.
Did he have a background in engineering?
He's got a background in a bit of everything.
Okay.
So he's got an engineer's brain as well. He's very good at figuring things out and making things work. So once he said that I was clearly an engineer, I went back to school and started talking to teachers about it. And at the time, in the late 90s, engineering wasn't for girls. It was a boys' game, and so all my teachers were saying, no, you don't. That's just for boys. You're a girl. You need to be a lawyer, or you need to be this or that, a teacher, or go and work in a nursery. And I was just like, ugh, that all seems so boring. So I thought, I'm going to do it anyway. The more they told me that I couldn't do it, the more I wanted to do it. And I found, I'm from the northeast originally, and there's a very big engineering home in the northeast. We're shipbuilders, bridge builders. We've got lots of engineering heritage up there. So there was a place the next town over that offered apprenticeships. So I went and did an aptitude test with them, and they said I'd be most suited to civil and structural engineering. So I managed to get an apprenticeship for 4 years and worked through it, and I've never looked back. I can't imagine doing any other type of job.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's such a great story. What do you think are the key experiences or key events that kind of like shaped your career in a positive way? So would that be, for example, the apprenticeship? Do you think that's the one that kind of like changed everything for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I really didn't get on with school. I really hated school and the act of learning and being stuck in a classroom. Didn't get on with it at all, and was just like, I'll do anything just to get away from it. So the apprenticeship for me was incredible. I got to learn. So my first year of my apprenticeship was hands on the tools, and I did a bit of welding, and I did a bit of sheet metal working, and I did soldering, electronics, and bits of everything. And it really opened my eyes to everyone can do everything. Whereas the years after that was spent one day at college, and then the rest of the time actually working with experts in the business. So I was, my apprenticeship was with a company called West's Engineering Design based in Darlington, and it was heavy civils, and so there was lots of petrochemical, and there was a lot of Ministry of Defence stuff, and really amazing, interesting things that I would never even dream of being able to work on, and yet I was thrown in at the deep end, and working with those people right at the start just really set me up for the rest of my career.
Yeah, that's amazing. Your story is just like a really great example of like a young person that's not really tied to like the normal educational system, but can still like achieve really, really great things by going into an apprenticeship. So uni is not everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually once I found engineering, signing up to go to college and go to university, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So it's finding that niche and that thing that you're really good at and that thing that interests you, and then education becomes a joy rather than torture.
Exactly. That's so inspiring. But what do you wish you would have known in your early career as an engineer?
I think one of the main things for me was that you're not set on a single path right at the beginning. I think a lot of pressure is put on you as a teenager to have a very determined end goal of this is what I'm going to be in 5 years, in 10 years, this is my career path, as like a single path. And my career hasn't been a single path. It's always been in engineering, but I've worked on, like I said, I started in like petrochemical and heavy civils. I've done house building, I've done wind turbines, I've done railway bridges. So although I'm an engineer, my career path, I've kind of just gone with whatever opportunities have presented themselves. I've kind of gone, yeah, that sounds interesting, let's give it a try. And it means that I've been able to work on so many different things rather than being stuck of, no, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. It's being open to opportunities.
Yeah, I have to agree. It just helps you become a more well-rounded professional as well. Just getting a little bit of everything and just getting the good stuff out of it.
You don't have to know where your end point is, as long as you've got a general direction. Just see what opportunities come up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was about to be my next question. Like, often people assume that when you choose a career path, you're limited to this role that you're confined to, so you can't really pick anything else. But you have proved that it is possible to seamlessly transition from a career as an engineer to a more managerial role within the industry. So how did you decide to make a change in the nature of your role?
I don't think I actively decided to change it. I got my chartership, my engineering chartership, at the beginning of 2020. And in looking for certain things on the internet as part of that, I found this course that was a degree apprenticeship, a master's degree apprenticeship for senior leaders. And when I read about it, I was like, oh, that's really interesting, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something else. And I went off and found whatever I was looking for. But I couldn't stop thinking about that course. And for some reason, it stuck in my brain. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, that's really interesting. I really want to do it. But I didn't do it with, like I said, that end goal of I'm going to be a manager, I'm going to be a leader. I did it more for self-development. I thoroughly enjoyed my chartership process. And so when I finished that and I got my chartership, I was kind of left with some spare time. I'm like, what can I do next? And so that was just another development stream for me to be able to develop myself and my own skills in those areas without thinking I'm going to be a director in 10 years' time and that's what I'm going to do. But the opportunity presented itself and I went with it, and then things have happened at FJD where it means that actually we do need someone to step up and take that operational role and have an overview of everything going on. So it just seems to have all worked out for the best.
That's amazing. So what is your favorite thing about the new role?
I think it's very much that I still have to use all of my engineering skills and knowledge. So although I'm not designing bridges anymore, having that engineering background and those engineering skills means that all of the things I'm putting in place, I'm coming from an engineer's point of view. So I'm not just putting things in place where all of the teams will be saying, oh, I have to do this, fill out this form just because. I'm doing it to help. So there's lots of issues and not problems, but there's lots of little like logic problems that need to be figured out as, oh, if we do that, then this will happen and that. So it's very much still being able to use that engineer's brain,
exactly,
but just to help the whole business rather than just my little team. So
that's so exciting. Sounds really exciting.
Yeah.
I know you're a very, very busy lady, so you like getting involved in so many different things. I would like to start with the STEM Ambassador program. I know you've been a really strong advocate for them. Tell us a bit more about it. How do you find the experience of being an ambassador?
I find it really rewarding, personally. It sounds really selfish to say that, but for me personally, it's giving back. I was when I was an apprentice, I was involved in a similar scheme up north about giving back to school children and getting people involved of just even knowing what engineers do. I think the engineering profession is very good at just quietly getting on and fixing the world and making the world a better place without shouting it from the rooftops of this is what we do. So I think a lot of children And it, certainly in my experience, when I've been into schools and colleges, a lot of them just don't even know what an engineer does. So my first question is always, I'm an engineer, what do I do? And I get everything from, do you fix cars, and they just have no, it's not taught. People are just not aware of it, basically, of what, as an engineer, what we do. So I think just being aware of what engineers do as a whole society is unbeatable. And my feedback from the kids has always been like, oh, what, so I could do that? And it's like, yeah, you could do anything. And it's not just building bridges as an engineer. You could design a new house, you could design a power station. There's a whole massive, my own experience of working for everything from wind farms through to railway tunnels means that as an engineer you can swap and change every couple of years and work in a different sector but still do that job. So
exactly. But do you find it difficult to explain to especially like such a young audience like what you do? Obviously there's a lot of like technical terms that I myself am trying to get a good grasp of at the moment, and you're so right about that. For example, I had it difficult to kind of like pinpoint exactly what engineers were doing, what architects were doing, what are the different divisions and areas and disciplines. Do you find it difficult to explain to children what is it exactly that you do?
No, I think taking it right back to basics. I think as an engineer we can inherently get caught up in the very technical, geeky details of it all. And being surrounded by people within the industry every day in an office means that you develop a very technical, geeky mindset. And so stepping back from that, so some of my clients in the past have been non-technical clients. They've been charities and things like that. So you have to adjust your language to suit the audience.
Exactly.
So taking it to school children, and I've worked with primary school right through up to colleges, taking it right back to basics actually helps me better understand my job and my role and what I do. But it also helps them grasp that I'm not gatekeeping it by using language that they don't understand. If I take it right back to, it's a wall here and a wall there, and we're going to put a bridge between the two, rather than saying we've got two abutments and we're putting a deck on top. The language doesn't have to be exclusive. We can include everyone with the language and not be totally hung up on the technicalities, because they're school children. They don't care whether it's an abutment or a wall.
Yeah, they just want to learn more about this world. What sort of impact do you think programs as such have on the interest children gain for sectors like engineering?
I think it's massive. I went to an all-girls school to talk to their maths class, and I talked to them through my career history and what I've done, and one of the first questions from one of the girls was, did you get a grade 9 in maths? Were you really good at maths? And taking it back to the old school was a grade A, and I was like, no, I didn't like maths. I didn't get on with maths, and I had not a bad teacher, just I wasn't engaged with it at school. I scraped a C in my GCSEs and stuff, and they were all shocked that I could do a technical engineering job while not being amazing at maths. And so me explaining to them that you don't have to be amazing at maths. You need to be able to look at a problem and solve it in a logical manner, or think outside of the box, look from different perspectives to be able to see, oh, this is the issue, we need to get from here to there, how can we do it? So that's what an engineer is. It's not about being amazing at maths. And so these girls were like, oh, okay, so I don't have to be amazing at maths to be an engineer. I just have to be able to follow the step-by-step process of maths to get the answer at the end, to prove the engineering principles. So their faces and their reactions of, wait a minute, I don't have to be amazing at maths. So they were all writing themselves off because they weren't A-star students.
Yeah, so it just goes to show how important it is to raise awareness about the different things, and to bridge this gap between schools and employers, just to sort of get some more practical knowledge from actual professionals that work in the field in their daily lives. So I think it's just amazing what you're doing. Congratulations for everything. what is your advice for other fellow engineers? Like, how can others get involved, and what sorts of activities can they expect if they would like to get involved?
There's the National STEM Ambassador Programme, and they will provide you with training. And there's a day's course or a couple of hours course where they'll go and talk you through everything that you need to know, and they give you the basics. But they then put you on their mailing list of different opportunities that can come up. Now, it could be a primary school that has an assembly, so they want you to talk for 20 minutes just about your career to date. So it could just be a very free-flowing, this is what I've done and this is how I got there. Or it could be that they want a practical demonstration. They want hands-on, let's get the kids doing something. But even then, there's lots of resources out there available, and the Institute of Civil Engineers offers kits, bridge building kits, and they've got earthquake plates. But the last one I did was at a primary school, and I had 20 minutes per slots throughout the day with the kids. And all I needed was some pennies and a sheet of A4 paper, and it was, how can we fold this paper to make it strong enough as a bridge to hold pennies? And just adding 1 or 2 folds to the piece of paper meant that it could go from holding 1 penny to holding 60 pennies. And that, clicking it in their brain, it's literally a folded sheet of paper.
And especially like doing an activity with their own hands, it's so impactful for them to kind of like realize, oh, I could like get a good grasp of this. I could like look into this a bit more.
Well, one of the feedback from the primary school teacher was, I didn't expect. So there was a young girl. So it was teams of about 15 children. And so I set them all off. I gave them an example of, this is how I'm going to fold it, and it can go from 1 penny to 5. Can you fold it better to get more pennies? And one young girl literally was straight away, she knew what she was doing, and she put her head down and she just got on with it and quietly folded it. And the teacher afterwards, her bridge, like I ran out of pennies before it would collapse, just a single sheet of A4. And her teacher was like, I would never have expected her to be so engaged, because academically she wasn't that strong.
So in a way, she was kind of like a sort of a young Michelle that had an engineering brain, but wasn't
Her problem-solving engineering brain come straight out, and she went, oh yeah, I just need to fold it this way and that way. Whereas academically, maths and English-wise, she might not have been that strong, but her problem-solving logic brain. So it just goes to prove that massive importance of exposing the kids to these kinds of career opportunities. You don't have to be amazing at maths and English.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
In line with that, we know that engineering is a male-dominated industry, with only an average of 12% of all engineers in the UK being women. So some interesting stats by the Women's Engineering Society reveal that only 46.4% of girls aged between 11 and 14 would consider a career in engineering, compared to 70% of boys. Only 42% of girls aged between 14 and 16 would consider a career in engineering, compared to 66% of boys. Only 25% of girls between 16 and 18 would consider a career in engineering, compared to 51% of boys. So this data points to an increased need to promote and mentor young girls to join the industry, and the Women's Engineering Society have made it their mission to achieve gender equality. What I would be curious to know is, how did you get involved with this organization?
So I think a lot of work has been done to engage young children into engineering, and with the STEM ambassadors and with the school curriculum, and there's a lot of work being done to try and encourage that gender balance at a young age. I think what the Women's Engineering Society are doing is trying to look at the workforce age as well, and what issues the gender imbalance there has. So there's another stat that it's something like 37% of women engineers don't come back after having a baby. They just leave the industry.
Really?
And it's like, why? Why are they not coming back to this industry? They've gone through the university, they've got the qualifications, they've had a job and got the experience, and then they go off and have a baby, and why are they not being welcomed back? And I know I experienced a difficult time when I went off. I've got 2 children, and coming back after my second, I'd lost all my confidence. I was a a new mum and I'd been out of the industry, and when I come back everything had changed at work. I was put into a new team, and so I really struggled with my mental health when I come back, and I wasn't fully supported by my employer at the time. So it's difficult, but I think what a lot of work the Women's Engineering Society are doing is looking at those things, and so they've got a returners program to get people back after maternity, and they've got mentors with older women in the industry to help with the younger women, and they host events and things. So for me, although I do a lot of work with STEM ambassadors to get the younger children in, I think I'm at a point now in my career where I can also help women who've decided, yes, they want to be engineers. I can help them stay in this industry, because it's an amazing industry to be in, and the impact and the influence you can have on the world around you as a whole is unmatched, really. So I think I saw the Women's Engineering Society and what they were doing for current engineers and for bringing that pipeline of engineers through, and I thought, this is what I can really help and get on board with. So.
And you're actually doing that. You're a mentor for several young engineers at FJD, and you're doing that really, really successfully. From what I can understand, you've also taken all the knowledge from the Women's Engineering Society, and you have created an internal engineering society for FJD Consulting. What was your motive behind that?
I think when we went into lockdown, the whole world changed. Overnight, everyone was kind of forced into this new way of working, and knowing how I struggled when my kids were young, so my kids are a bit older now, but when my children were very young and my husband was working away, I felt very isolated and alone. And it was, you're not alone because you've got children around you, but I remembered those feelings, and I didn't want others to feel like they had no support or they couldn't go to anyone. So I just set up this group. We chatted about nonsense. We had catch-up calls to chat about anything that we wanted. But one of the ladies on there had a young child at home, and it was just her and her daughter, and they were struggling. She was struggling mentally, and we had catch-up calls. And at one point, I remember having a video call with her, and I set up my daughter to have a video call with her daughter, and they were just playing games.
Amazing.
But it gave her 20 minutes peace of not just being mum, to just step away and go, oh, okay, just some breathing space and some head space. And I think it was so important at that time. But it's not just used for that anymore. It's like a space to celebrate, and it's not just a women's engineering society. We have it's for anybody who's marginalised within the engineering, whether that's LGBTQ+ or trans or non-binary, or it's for anybody who is not that main demographic that we see within the engineering industry, and so we share all sorts of things in there. It's a really supportive group. So.
That's amazing. I think it's really important also to raise awareness about the importance of creating small support systems within companies. I think it makes a huge difference. It makes everyone feel welcome, and it also contributes to a better company culture as well. So congratulations for all your involvement with the FJD Engineering Society. This year's theme for Women in Engineering Day is Imagine the Future. And my last question for you would be, what is your vision for the future of engineering from a gender perspective? How do you think we can achieve that vision?
I think for me, gender should be irrelevant. I think as an engineer, you either have an engineering brain or you don't. I think you can either... And gender is totally irrelevant to that equation, and I think there's been a great drive to get more women and non-binary and all of that into the industry. I think for the future, I think my hope would be that it was a non-issue, that we didn't have to have any of these things anymore. We had a very diverse and inclusive engineering workforce, because I think in engineering especially, when we look at a problem, so an engineering problem, we come at it from our own life perspective of how we were brought up, what we've seen in the past. All of our experience to date kind of filters how we will solve that problem, and so having a more diverse group of engineers looking at a problem means that we are going to come at that problem from so many different perspectives that we are going to get a better solution out of it.
Exactly.
And so I think for me, imagine in the future it would be a very inclusive, diverse engineering workforce where we didn't have to say, oh, we've got so many female engineers and we've got engineers.
What is one thing you think we could do to achieve that? Is it like involvement with organizations such as Women in Rail or Women's Engineering Society? Is it that sort of thing that you believe would have a positive impact on that?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I think marginalising, and so I can understand why we've needed all of these women in rail, women in engineering, all of these things up to this point. But I think in the future they're going to start, hopefully, not being needed as much, like I say, because if we can get a more balanced, inclusive workforce of engineers, then we shouldn't need to have. And I personally don't like the term woman. It's not that I get offended by it, but I see it as, so the Women's Engineering Society is like, I can understand why it was needed up until this point.
Yeah.
But I'm not a woman engineer, I'm just an engineer.
Yeah, exactly. It's that sort of thing, like girl boss.
Yes.
Why not just boss?
And it also, to me, it excludes all of our trans and non-binary people as well, and it should just be for everybody.
As you say, we shouldn't have to make a distinction. It should be like equal.
Yes.
But hopefully long term we can achieve sort of a cultural mindset shift.
Yeah.
That would be like ideal. Yeah, good stuff, great stuff. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for all the great insights that you've offered us.